alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to my channel. This is the 7th verse of Surah Al-Fatiha.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Now, which path is straight? To come to the meaning of the straight path, it is the path which has no turns and twists. The term signifies the particular way of faith which equally avoids the two extremes of excess and deficiency. One who follows the straight path would in no matters of doctrine and practice both neither go beyond the limit nor fall short of them. The last two verses of Surah Al-Fatiha define and identify the straight path, something man has been prompted to pray for immediately earlier. The verse says, "The path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace." As to who these people are, another verse of the Holy Quran gives us details in the following words: "Those whom Allah has blessed, namely the prophets, the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada, and the righteous." These are the four categories of those who find favor with Allah. Among them all, the prophets are the greatest. The Siddiqeen, the constantly true, are those who acquire spiritual perfection and therefore attain the highest rank among the followers of a prophet. In common parlance, they are called men of Allah or saints. The Shuhada, that is the martyrs, are those who sacrifice even their lives for the sake of their faith or who bear witness to the truth, as the world admits of both meanings. The righteous are those who follow the Sharia completely, not only in the matter of obligations, but also with regard to commendable actions. In everyday language, they are called the pious or the righteous or the good. This verse then determines the straight path in a positive manner, identifying it with the path followed by men of these four categories. The next verse, by a process of elimination, does the same in a negative manner by saying, "Not of those who have incurred your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray." Those who have incurred Allah's wrath are the people who, in spite of being quite familiar with the commandments of Allah, willfully go against them out of a calculated perversity or in the service of their desires, or in other words, who are deficient in obeying divine injunctions. This, for example, was the general condition of the Jews, who were ready to sacrifice their religion for the sake of a petty worldly gain, and used to insult and sometimes even kill their prophets. As for those who go astray, they are the people who, out of ignorance or lack of thought, go beyond the limits appointed by Allah and indulge in excess and exaggerations in religious matters. This, for example, has generally been the error of the Christians, who exceeded the limits in their reverence for a prophet and turned him into a god. On the one hand, there is the rebelliousness of the Jews, who not only refused to listen to the prophet of Allah, but went on to kill them. On the other hand, there is the excessive zeal of the Christians, who defied a prophet. Therefore, the essential meaning of the verse is that in praying for the straight path, we do not ask for the path of those who are the slaves of their desires, perverse in thought and action, and deficient in performing their religious obligation, not the path of those who are ignorant or unmindful or misled and indulge in excess and exaggeration in religious matters, but wish for a path between these two extremes, which inclines neither toward excess nor towards deficiency, and which is as free of the prompting of desires as of doubt and confusion and of erroneous beliefs. In short, the prayer for the straight path is the essence of Surah Al-Fatiha, since knowing and following the straight path is the real knowledge and the real achievement in this mortal world. A mistake in picking it up right takes peoples and nations to ruins. Otherwise, there are even non-Muslims who claim to be seeking God and undertake stupendous labors to attain this end. The Holy Quran has therefore defined the straight path so explicitly from a positive as well as eliminative point of view. Now let's talk about the key to the straight path. But before we proceed, there is another problem to be considered, the answer to which would open the door to a new and more comprehensive understanding. It would seem that in order to define the straight path, it should have been sufficient to call it the path of the prophets, peace be upon him, or the path of the Quran, which would also have been more succinct and more explicit. For the whole of the Holy Quran is really an explanation of the straight path, and the teachings of the prophets, peace be upon him, an elaboration. But setting aside the explicit form of expression, the Holy Quran has taken up 2 verses of this short surah for defining and delimiting the straight path positively and negatively, and has thus indicated that if one wishes to follow the straight path, one should seek such and such men, those on whom Allah has bestowed His grace, and adopt their way. Here, the Holy Quran does not ask us to follow the path of the Quran, for a book alone is not sufficient for the grooming of man. Nor does it ask us to follow the path of the prophets, for the Holy Prophet was not to be in his word forever, and no other prophet was to come after him. So, in enumerating those whose teaching and example can help us attain the straight path, the Holy Quran, besides the prophets, peace be upon him, included those 2, who will always be found living amongst us till the last day of the world, namely the Siddiqin, the Shuhada, and the righteous. For the purpose of indicating the manner in which one can find the straight path, the Holy Quran has thus referred not to a book, but to certain men. According to a hadith, when the Holy Prophet informed his companions that, like earlier communities, his ummah too would be divided into 70 or 72 sects, and that only one among them would be on the right path, they wanted to know as to which group it would be. The answer he gave also led unto certain men of Allah. For he said, "That which follows my way and the way of my companions." All this comes to mean that written books or oral traditions alone cannot teach, train, and discipline man. For this, one has to be knowing men and learning from them. In yet other words, the real teacher and groomer of man has to be another man. A book cannot take that place all by itself. The truth holds good even for sphere of everyday life. No one has ever become a doctor or an engineer or even a cook or a doctor merely by reading a book. Similarly, studying the Holy Quran and the Hadith on one's own cannot by itself be sufficient for the moral, spiritual education and training of a man. Such a study must be carried on under the guidance of a specialist or a genuine scholar before it can be useful. It is common observation that many people today, though otherwise educated, cherish the erroneous notion that one can acquire a masterly knowledge of the Holy Quran and Hadith merely by reading a translation or, at best, a commentary. But the error of such an enterprise is self-evident. Had a book in itself been sufficient for the guidance of men, there was no need for the prophets to be sent. But Allah, in sending us His book, has also sent His prophets to serve as a teacher and guide. In defining the straight path too, He has also enumerated those of His servants who find special favor with Him, all of which argues that in trying to understand the book of Allah and to act upon it, one cannot solely rely on one's study and judgment, but must turn to someone who knows. 2 things are necessary for the physical and spiritual well-being and success of man: the book of Allah, which contains guidance for every sphere of human life, and the men of Allah who help in making this guidance effective. The way to profit from the men of Allah is to access them according to the well-known principles of the book of Allah. Those who do not conform to these principles should just not be regarded as men of Allah. But when one has found men of Allah in the real sense, one should seek their guidance in order to understand the meaning of the book of Allah and act upon it.